Welcome to the Love, Sex, and Leadership podcast, where you can discover simple tantric teachings to embody your true power, awaken your soul's wisdom, and live an inspired life as a natural, intuitive, and heart-centered leader.
If you go out in the garden over here, there's some wind chimes. I don't know what it says exactly. The translation app may have been off. But basically it said the wind chime is a hollow bit of energy, and then when it connects to, whatever the thing that's knocking it, it creates sound from emptiness. And there's a beautiful piece with that, and that for you as a practitioner, my greatest desire for you is that you can show up into a session with emptiness, not with fullness that's trying to say, we need to do this and this and this, and this is what. And yeah, these are all tools that you're supporting to master your own experience and master the tools that you're showing up with. But ultimately, when you are an empty channel, then you're letting love move through you. And you're giving the transmission of that emptiness into that being that's in front of you. And when emptiness, not emptiness as if it's badness, but emptiness from a fullness and expansion, and when you meet someone from emptiness, and that person, that body, that energy recognizes that there's a full capacity to be in their everythingness, to be in whatever is alive. From yesterday I said, all of you is welcome. And so when you as a practitioner meet a body and a being from the place of emptiness, then anything that's not love or above in their body wants to come out because it feels safe enough to do so. And this is where the nervous system meets somatic education, is because when you can have the tools and the resources and recognize that all you actually need to do is to support this individual to the best of their ability to be in a state that lets any of the bubbling up inside of them breathe, sound, and express through their body, then you're giving them the gift of emptiness. You're giving them the gift that's allowing the past, remembered guilts and shames and fears and frustrations come up to the light of awareness to be felt, experienced, and expressed. And so the traumas of our past, we have to meet it at a similar energetic to which it was received. This is one of the biggest challenges I have with a lot of, you could say, more modern, present psychology that has an issue, and this is the issue, and all we do for sometimes a year, sometimes 3 years, sometimes 5 years is just go, oh, look at this issue. We're just going to keep going around. And then we'll go around the other way, just to pretend like we're doing something different. And we'll go around this again and again. How many have been there at times in your life? Yeah, and so, because what it requires to meet this energy is a deep place of emptiness, of you as a practitioner that can be present to whatever comes up from not judging. And whatever arises in this space, especially when we go into sessions, all of you is welcome. So if you're suddenly in a session and memories come up for when you were 5 or 10 or 15, and you need to express and feel, if you've been going like this the whole time, then a part of you is going to feel like you're not safe to express this. And when you feel like you're safe enough to express it, the way that you do it to actually heal the things from the past is saying what you need to say and expressing what you need to express. Because the young child in you that had that trauma that happened to him or her at a young age probably had their voice shrunk, probably wasn't able to, I don't feel safe, oh, no, don't touch me like that, express and breathe and sound. And a little bit about my own journey into where I am now. When I was 25 and I started doing my master's degree, I was working at the time for a self-development publishing company, and we had a few thousand authors around the world sharing stories like, thank God I was raised. And thank God my son died. And thank God I was sexually molested. And I found myself in one-to-one conversations with people who had gone through some of the most horrific traumas in their life. Some of them were healed to it, some of them not so much. And I ended up not having a lot of trauma experience, but going in, starting to doing trauma coaching in a way. And I recognized different pieces that were present for someone who had actually been able to heal through the trauma, is that there wasn't a trying to push it away, there was a deep meeting of it. There was a deep meeting of it. And this is one of the challenges I have with a lot of psychology and different aspects of trauma healing, is that they're not actually going to the source of it and feeling what we need to feel. Because a lot of our nervous system, when we go to that source, can then disassociate again. And then there's a fear that that's going to happen. But this is where we're training someone to be able to breathe, sound, and stay present. And one of the big things why Lotus and I are quite aligned is that when it comes to doing more internal work, I'm 99.9% of the time never doing internal work with someone within the first 3 to 4 sessions. I'm supporting them to be able to breathe, sound, and feel. If they can't feel the pain of their mom when she abandoned them when they are 10 years old, me putting a finger inside of them isn't going to suddenly shift that. It's actually probably going to re-traumatize them because they haven't been able to be present. You know, there's a woman who came to our training this past February, and she had reached out to me probably a year before wanting to take the training, and we started doing sessions together instead. So for about a year, I did, about 4 to 5 sessions when I was traveling through Florida. And each time I could feel like she's like, wanted to go into internal work. And I wasn't saying that, but I could feel that in her body, and I just kept meeting her where she was. And there was a lot of deep inner healing work that was necessary to do before I could do work like that. Because if I just go into doing work like that, then the system can't actually assimilate it. And this is one of the biggest challenges when people are receiving one-off yoni massages and they're receiving, deep base work without their bodies actually being able to be prepped for breathing, sounding, and expressing. Because if you're receiving internal work and then suddenly a memory comes up and you haven't already trained your body to breathe, sound, and express, then you're just going to freeze deeper inside of you, and it's going to re-traumatize. Sometimes it can, but it might not actually clear it at the source. And this is really the nature of slow somatic processing. There is no destination. There is no place that we need to go other than just continually reading and recognizing where someone's at in their own nervous system to be able to support them to continually come back into a level of homeostasis. And now in a session structure, which I'll go into a piece as well, leaving someone in a fight and flight response isn't supportive. So you want to feel like they're rising and then they're coming back down, because it's in the integration that the healing actually happens more than anywhere. It's in the integration that the nervous system can begin to assimilate and integrate into day-to-day life, rather than just having these peak high ayahuasca experiences where we make love with Jesus in the sky, and then we don't know, we went from here to here, but we didn't go to-dun, 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 to-dun. We went boosh. And then afterwards we go boosh. And then we're like, fuck, who's been there before? And so what sometimes this work can feel like for a client is 3 steps forward, 2 steps back. I'm a mountain climber. I'm often climbing mountains and getting out in nature. This last summer, I was climbing Kilimanjaro. This next year, I'll be climbing Aconcagua, which is about 7,000 meters in Argentina. I'm taking a group of men up there. And I've climbed a lot of volcanoes in my life. And often when you're climbing a volcano, when you're in like sheets, you're climbing up 3 steps up, 2 steps back. 3 steps up, 2 steps back. And it's nerve-wracking. It's like, damn, And literally the ground just keeps like falling away, and you're like, I'm not getting anywhere. And then after a half hour, you're like, oh, I am getting somewhere. And I looked at that as a relation point to what this work feels like sometimes, is that you're making slow steps. And sometimes those big, huge steps that you make, they might feel great in the moment, but if you haven't been able to assimilate your nervous system along the way, then you're just going to get to the Monday morning blues after a weekend workshop that you exploded into the sun. And then you come back down and you're like, oh, fuck, I don't know how to get there without taking the medicine, without taking this thing. And so as a practitioner, when you're working with someone's nervous system, it's recognizing where they are at any given time, supporting them to meet their edges and to meet that edge, but not to push them over the edge without a parachute. But to meet that edge, it's to do it with presence, awareness, and attunement. And a lot of times when I'm giving sessions with someone, I can recognize there's a place that my mind and ego wants to take them. And I'm like, oh, I know what I can do with them. I can go there. But their bodies aren't ready. And if I take them there, that's not going to be a service to them. Even though they might have that peak amazing experience that's absolutely incredible, and you'll have some peak experiences through this week. And the time after where you're assimilating and dropping down and integrating and letting that all land is actually more important sometimes than the peak experience. And this place of attunement and deep, like, professional awareness for you as a practitioner, and I know some of you are working with groups as well. This happens in group space of working with the nervous system. There's a sense where people feel like they can go into, and that's a great access point. And it's amazing that they can access those places, but what's really important is that they have the capacity to then come back down into the rest and digest. And having the time and the space to do that, to me, I think is one of the most important pieces I've learned with the nervous system and being able to assimilate it into day-to-day life. A couple other pieces that I have on the sheet of paper. For one, and those of you who have done sessions before, when we're going into sessions here, what's really important is that the client has full permission to say no, to say fuck you, to say get the fuck out of me, you asshole, you know, all of that word, because we often didn't have a chance to say and communicate those things when trauma was happening to us. And our boundaries, our no, when it hasn't been appreciated, honored, and you know, been a place of yes from a young age, and the no has been someone else, you know, pushing their yes upon you, meaning any time somebody else's yes has been more important than your no, and you've said yes to something that you're a no to, that no is still residing in your body as stored somatic energy that hasn't expressed itself out. I don't know if I have my magnets with me, but the way our bodies are made up is we have positive charges and negative charges, our cells. And these cells, the positive charge and the negative charge, create matter, creates the floor that we're on, it creates the bones that are in our body. And when you've had things in your past that you haven't said no to, that you haven't expressed to, that you haven't equilibrated the charge of, then imagine this, it's like a half spin of you could say a negative energy that's in your body. And what it's doing, it's attracting the people, places, and experiences into your life that are trying to support you to love, honor, and appreciate the perfection of the past. Now, what does that look like in real time? That looks like probably attracting a very similar relationship or a very similar partner, just with a different name, over and over and over again. How many have been there? Yeah, because there's some medicine and some gold that's there, that's inside that situation that hasn't been rendered as a gateway for your growth and evolution. So you're attracting that situation simply because your body system wants to grow, evolve, and expand. And so you're trying to draw in similar experiences to the things that happened in the past that you didn't love, So you're drawing that in, but then you keep saying, no, universe, I don't want that anymore. I don't want that. Keep pushing it away, keep pushing it away. And something you keep pushing it away, what does it do? It's bigger and bigger and bigger. And so it's listening and asking that thing that's showing up, why are you here? What are you trying to show me? What's present that you're bringing into my field of awareness? And where can I express what I didn't express, feel what you didn't feel, and let that energy move and vibrate in your body rather than just keep pushing it down? Because if you keep pushing it down, it manifests as disease, as cancer, as all of these different ailments in the body simply because we haven't been feeling. So really a healthy nervous system feels deeply. Now that doesn't mean you're in catharsis 100% of the time, but when anger comes up, anger gets expressed. It's like, look at happiness and sadness. When someone's really happy, we're not like, oh my God, Lord, you're really happy today? Can you take your pills? It's all the pills you have, do you take them? Because you're way too happy. Like, I think something's wrong. But when someone's sad, we're like, oh my God, you're sad. Let me fix you. Let me make you all better because I feel uncomfortable because you're sad. Did you get that? That's often what's happening in society. Someone's sad. Their sadness making me feel uncomfortable. Let me give them a tissue so that they are all better. Here. Please take that tissue so I don't have to feel the uncomfortability of your sadness anymore.
Take a breath.
So yeah, there's a lot here, and we'll be weaving all of this into throughout this week. But I'm starting with this now because this is, to me, one of the most important pieces. And with the nervous system, it can be really easy to get stuck up into the mind with all the different, there's amazing courses you can go on. I'm not like a nervous system expert, but I've been working for bodies for over 16 years, so I'm quite good with reading bodies and what's happening. And I understand enough, and my geek can dive into it a lot and to understand these pieces. But I also know when it comes to being present with someone, they don't really care about dorsal or ventral or parasympathetic. Well, like, what the fuck are you talking about? Just be with me. And that's ultimately what you're learning to do, is just to be with them. And your mind might have all the reasons, understandings of what's happening inside of them. They don't even really need to understand. You're understanding this on a cognitive level so that when it comes to your practice as a practitioner and your practice inside your own inner world, you can recognize the times and the spaces when you need to express, when you need to feel, when you need to move your body, when you need to express the frustration inside. And noticing, and I've noticed this huge inside myself, even though I can feel the part of me that needs to go beat the fuck out of a pillow, I'm like trying to mentally justify why I shouldn't. Who knows this? You're like, no, I'm too good for that. I've done that before. But think about all the times in your life when you didn't. And the backlog of energy and moments and the times when you didn't express and you didn't communicate and you didn't let your voice be heard. And that's literally a backlog of energy. So part of what we're doing is we're getting empty. And by getting empty, we're equilibrating the charges of our past by breathing, sounding, and feeling them so that we can actually hold a place of presence. And what does presence mean? Presence means I'm here with you. I'm not future projecting into the future. And I'm not going back into the past. I'm right here now. And by not going back in the past, there's a level of cognitive equilibration and appreciation for what's happened, as well as somatic expression of what hasn't been felt. So that brings me here. And the same thing when I future project into the fantasy, into a moment that I think is going to be better than now. It's breaking down that fantasy so that I can actually show up as a being that's present here, sounding and connecting into my body, into my center. Deep breath in. I want to open up for any questions that might be alive on this. Yeah.
So, my system, my mind tries to put it together so I can like bring in what I learned, what I experienced into. I've done quite 35 and 40, quite a lot of SE, somatic experiencing on my own. And also in my narrative teachings, I learned about that. And then, but I feel now, looking back, that actually those are somehow also good tools, but they blocked somehow my energy because I couldn't completely cry, I couldn't get mad. It was more like still in space now, move between the different polarities, and it was like, okay, that was also helpful, but somehow I needed actually what came afterwards is really being allowed to really cry, to be angry, to stomp, and so, and now I'm like in this place like, okay, I mean, okay, differentiate and all that tools of the SV. How, where do they right being? Somehow one answer I have now, I'm not sure it's the right answer, is like, no, actually it helps maybe in between the gap if somebody can't get into their body and dissociate. So this little bit smoother can help just the first step to stay here.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm a little bit
So if I hear you correctly, there's a part of your brain that's through somatic experiencing very much fragmenting the place to which you feel like you need to work with someone and not allowing the naturalness of what's alive to be there. Is that accurate?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, and what comes up for me when you ask that is we live in a society that often cognitively is expressing our emotional body. We're so used to our emotional body, not actually, like when someone asks you how you feel, we often go into deep philosophical explanations that are coming from our mind, not our body. And so what I see in a lot of, there's different levels of somatic experiencing, I've done a lot of that, is sometimes it's somatic experiencing through the mind. And it's not actually like letting the somatic aliveness expressed through our body. And if we look at this current crazy, meme thing going around between a woman meeting an animal or a bear in the woods, it's like we're often afraid of that bear because there isn't a place in our society that lets the wildness express. And so even in these deep, profound somatic moments when we're dropping into our body, it's still like, oh, nope, it has to be done like this. And I'm like, fuck off. Like, let the full aliveness of my being move, vibrate, and express without needing to be understood why. One of the biggest gateways of freedom in my own journey, and what I see with clients is, and this was such a shift for me, one of with this, I remember the first time I took the training with them. And I was in a grassy field in New Zealand, and it was pouring rain out. And I was just crying. I watched my mind that was so used to analyzing every little thing of why this was happening. I watched my mind trying to come in and figure out what I was doing. And some part of me, I don't think it was my mind, just said, just fucking leave me alone. And I just cried. And I was angry, and I let emotions pour through me without reason, without understanding why. And there was a shift that happened in my own intellectual, academic, everything-driven world where I was like, wow, there's a part of the emotional body that doesn't give a fuck about wanting to be understood. Now, that doesn't mean it just needs to be run rampant, but what it means is that with an awareness of giving the freedom of the emotions and the somatic body and the things alive just to express and just to be wild and weird and kooky and whatever else is there, then naturally there's going to be an assimilation process that opens. And some of the things that we're going to be taking you into here, your mind might be like, what the fuck are we doing? Like, this is uncomfortable, this is strange. I don't understand the reason, the why, the comprehension of why that needs to happen. And this is where, when we drop into that state, so much more gets to be revealed. I don't know if that answers your question, but I could feel like there's possible threads of that there. Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like actually it's the loyalty, because I appreciate the teacher there
Yeah.
then, and it's like there's a loyalty. I don't actually, my experience is actually much more deeper and much more healing, going through deep processes to express, and that's just my experience.
Yep.
And it's something is there's like, okay, I felt now like, well, I can let it go
Yep.
with gratitude and without judgment. That actually that's not my way.
Exactly. And that's, I love that you bring that in, because there's things, like just as we said in the agreement field, there's things that we're going to show you this week that you're like, this doesn't resonate with me. And I don't want any one of you to be me or to be Lourdes. Like, you're your own beautiful teacher. And the way in which you assimilate this work into your life is absolutely amazing. And that's like, you're utilizing all of the tools that you have, and just like, and to me, any teacher who's saying, this is the way, and this is the way it has to be done, it's like that, I feel like there's an old paradigm that needs to die, and is slowly dying, because there's a lot of identification of the ego to, this needs to happen like this and like this. You know, I was just doing an interview with Margot Anand, who's kind of like a grandma of Tantra, and I love her. She's 80 years old, going on, you know, probably 25, and we hang out. She hits on me all the time. We have coffee together. It's great. It's a good time. And I remember the first time I took a training with her years ago, it was in Spain, and it was a great training, and I enjoyed it. At the end of it, I came up to her and I said, you know, Margot, are you open to feedback? She looked at me and she's like, You could feel I was coming from a loving place. So it's like, yeah, okay. So I shared, I'm like, obviously, you're like, I have so much deep respect and love and everything you created, and my experience of your co-teachers is they're not stepping into their power because they're just trying to be like you. And she's like, but they're supposed to be like me, because this is the way, and this is the way it happens, and this is the methodology that I taught that needs to be delivered in this A, B, X, Y, Z. And I was like, fair enough, love. Yeah, I got you. And what I was met in that moment with was just a different paradigm of doing things. And we're moving, we're evolving, and in this work more and more. And there is a time and a space where that absolute methodology is a requirement. And there's things that we're going to teach you here that going through each step is important. But then after you go through each of those steps, like, assimilate it into your own world. And that's really where you get to have the flavor of your own essence. Because if you're just regurgitating the information that we've shared, then it's not really you stepping into the divine genius that you are. And every one of you is a genius. Every one of you has a gift. And our intention is just to inspire and to light that gift up so that you impact all the people in your life. And the tools that we're sharing, take what's there for you, and you might have something that gets created from totally out of nothing, that's just not anything that's ever been seen. Beautiful. Utilize it. Flow with it. And this is also what gets me in this field, is when I see people copyright the new modality of this. It's like, that's nothing new about you. This was done 30 years ago and 70 years ago and 100 years ago, just had a different name. Yes, it's beautiful that you've copyrighted it as the XYZ process, and you're going to now have a lot of ego identification of it for the next 30, 40 years of your life. I celebrate you. And can we go beyond that, please? Deep breath in. So we have time, maybe we should another couple of questions. Yeah.
Just a quick one. The name you mentioned earlier of your teacher in when you were at the university?
Yeah, so I had a few teachers. So I did my master's degree at the University of Santa Monica, which was a 2-year in-person master's in spiritual psychology. It's now online as a certificate program. Amazing. It was basically 2 very traditionally trained psychotherapists that wanted to create a more experiential program. So we would learn a tool, a technique, and then we'd immediately sit down as a client, as a counselor, as a neutral observer. It was amazing. It really set me in my journey for my coaching work. And then I was also studying with Michael Beckwith, which runs a place called Agape, and that's a lot of basically becoming a channel of spirit. And that had a big impact on me at that time. And then another mentor I was studying with as well was Dr. Martini, who's kind of the mad scientist, ex-chiropractor, has programs that basically break down the meaning of the universe and how we, the origins of the cell and how we live and breathe. And if you want to go like deep into mental cognition for a week or 10 days of your life, it'll mind fuck the shit out of you for days. So, highly recommended if that's your kind of kink. It's been my kink at times. The last one I did with him was many years ago, and I feel like I'm still integrating with that. But he's a dear friend as well. Been working in this field a long time. Yeah. Any other questions? Yeah.
Okay, when working with patients, mentally with what you said, to say no, to say, to live with them, sometimes they should take more present and could say, okay, no, but hold, or no, get out. But sometimes it's associated, so, like, let's say, becomes more intuitive. You would just never kind of, you don't really ask you at the time. So you can
Yeah, I mean,
limit more of those details. Like,
to me, when I see someone beginning to disassociate and not communicate, I'll just, like what your tongue? I'll give them a little bit of a tap. I give a little bit of movement in the throat and just see some of their as we're going into sessions together. And all that's doing is just bringing them back into the awareness of the touch that's there. That's some of the, tools in that sense. In terms of their, I don't know if I understand the exact nature of the question, but in terms of the no, I find someone that can really just fully honor and express that no, and sometimes there's such a fear of expressing the no for what it means as a child, what it meant to say no, and we weren't allowed to say no, and everything else around that. But just simply the exercising of that no can start to bring the nervous system back online more, because literally all the times we haven't been able to say no, the more that we're able to do that, then we know our capacity to say no when things arise, and then we can communicate that, especially in session space.
I mean, more like when the flow to this work,
Yeah.
sometimes no means because the work and no needs to come out. And sometimes no means just a get off me. So sometimes just feel
Well, yeah. So you'll see that in the sheet as well. We have safe words. So the safe words that we'll be using in this space is yellow and red. Yellow means, if I'm working with Lotus and something, she goes, says yellow. I'm just going to pause. I'm not going to remove my hand. I'm just going to stay there. I'm going to let her body assimilate to what's happening here. If she says red, then I'm just going to slowly take my hands away. I'm not going to go, oh my God, you said red. It's going to slowly come away. And in this space, if someone is saying yellow or red, just put your hand up. That way one of us can come over. And then it will end up being a teaching moment for the client, for the giver, etc. In these terms, there's other terms, maybe you want to use that. I find a lot of people, they haven't had a lot of trauma around yellow or around red, so they're not like, red! Ah! It's just not fair. I mean, if there is, then maybe have a different safety word. With some strains, I use the word avocado at times, but then, there could be trauma from an avocado. So.
It's really important as a practitioner that you don't get frustrated or become slowly, and for you to explain to them how powerful it is for them to yell at whatever the perpetrator was in their past. And that's why when they scream no, it's your understanding that they're screaming no to someone else. This is why the colors are so valuable. And that's the only thing that's about you. And you can feel it, but still, if you're just beginning, those of you who are just beginning, it is really powerful to have this awareness of this is not at all about me. I am the 10%. This comes from embryo Harville Hendricks and Helen Kelly Bunce. 90% of what's happening when an adult is triggered is from their past. Only 10% is from this moment. It's important to understand in couples work as well, and in your own relationships, that you cannot make your partner get so angry
you reminded them of someone in the past who made them a bit scary. Yeah. The other thing I want to say is how important it is for us to have emotional currency. Emotional currency means I am emotionally current. So if my client is sobbing, they don't bring on my internal need to sob. I can have empathy for them, and you may see tears in my eyes, but I'm not feeling my own pain. I'm wholly there to me. If I saw this in my very first Tantra massage training, where I was riveted in the demonstration, because the demonstration was very, very real, and the person there was having huge release of trauma from the past. And I saw several other participants in the class like really struggling, and I'm here like this, energy running through me because I can feel that. And until you can get to that place where a scream feels as good as an orgasm to you observing and holding space for, then you may need to do a lot more emotional release work so that you can. Yeah.
Yeah, and ultimately, the client is going to feel, whether consciously or unconsciously, how much you're able to hold for them. And if they feel that they can, scream at you and call you a rapist and all the other things, and you're just going to be there continuing to hold loving presence, then it's actually going to be some of the deepest layers of healing that's allowed for them. Especially when we're going into sessions like the nature of this week that we're working with is that there's going to be deep healing for you happening individually and a lot of learning for you happening professionally. And both are absolutely intrinsically connected, because just as you heal all that stuff from the past, you literally empty out your, the rocks you've been carrying in your back for a long time, so that you're able to hold more spaciousness when you're in that professional framework and someone's screaming and yelling, because you're like, I know that crazy one inside of me. This is sweet. And that took me a long time, because I completely negated my emotional body for a long time in my life. I didn't even know it existed. And so there was a lot of the projection of emotions onto the partners I was with, and I could own that emotions inside of me. Now when I see it in sessions I'm doing and work I'm doing, it's like, I probably have my own kink too, but that's another story. Any other questions? And my recommendation with the sheet, I went through most of the things there, is, take time. Each of the sheets that we're giving you will get through most of the points, but again, you can read through that, and that will, a lot of what we've been sharing here will land more deeply. There's different ways in which our minds and our bodies learn. So you can read that sheet and totally assimilate it, so you can read that 10 times and you have no idea what it said. But just by some of you listening in this conversation, you're assimilating things in. So there's different layers of the way in which you're learning and growing and evolving through this week. Taking one out? Yeah.
Hey, Clara. I have a question. I don't know if this is the right place to ask, but since we are working with clients in such different way, in lot sexual way and everything, how do we stop them from getting attached to us or projecting on us or falling in love with us or thinking that they are?
Yeah, we'll be speaking into that through this week, but I'll speak into it now, because it will be relevant later on today as well. So for me, as a male body doing this work and showing up in the world as a male Tantra teacher that also does, deep internal work, does a lot of projections and thoughts in every way, shape, and form that's there. So, and I'm aware of that. What's really present to me is that the energy that I'm running is going here. I'm running energy like this, I'm not running energy like this. And so, I've had at times working with someone that I can feel their projection of their love and lust upon me, and I'm also not shaming them for that. This is an important piece as well. It's like I'm, there's a client I'm working with right now, I can feel that there's a part of her that wants more from me in a relationship. And I'm very clear in my boundaries. And every time I do that, she receives that really beautifully. But there's a part of her, because of her own background, that's used to wanting to tend and befriend the people that are close. So this is her nervous system assimilating into what's going to bring her safety. And I keep giving that projection back to her. I say, yeah, I know that, I see that you observe me this way, and this is inside of you. But I'm not shaming her for her erotic body, honoring it and celebrating it, but doing it with very clear boundaries. And especially for female bodies doing this work, and we'll speak into this more, but if you start to feel any of that energy, it's not a shaming of the energy, it's just like, and let that come back to you. And there's different ways and tools and practices, especially when it gets into hands on the body, that you're able to do. But yeah, that's a great question. And the other piece of this, and this is more of a shadow haunting piece inside of all of you, is often the clients that you're bringing into your life are, I don't think I even need to say it, they're giving you something that you're probably not receiving. And so what part of you is unconsciously attracting that and then saying you don't want it? Does that make sense? And this is where, like, shadow work is such an important piece to be a healthy practitioner. Because if not, you're like, oh my God, I have all these people that just want to love me, and they just keep giving me their undivided love, and what do I do with this? It's so terrible. Oh my God, this doesn't serve me in any way. Yeah? You get what I'm saying? So this is a really important piece, and what this does is it ultimately, when you're able to track those shadow pieces and do the shadow work necessary, and I'll take you into some practices and pieces of that as well this week, is that ultimately you're then going to be able to hold a more solid container of presence, of love, of awareness that isn't going to be thrilled. There might be projections that might get thrown on you, but the only projections that are going to land are the ones that are sticky enough to stay. And if there's nothing to stick onto, then they can just keep trying to grab them. But it's not that you're trying to like deflect them away. There isn't anything to grab onto. So eventually they're like, oh, this person is just going to love me without attachment. This doesn't mean I need to fuck them or have sex with them or anything else like that. No, it just means that they're showing up in loving service for me. And this is some of what happens in the client's brain through time and space.